Hi, this is Chris Monk at Highline Guitars, and you're watching episode 61 from the Luthier's Workbench. Lots been going on the past week. I've got a guitar on the bench that is very near completion, and I'll show you that in a minute. Another guitar which I've been applying finish to, and I'm letting that one cure out. I'll also show you that one as well. But what I've been working on for the past week is I'm doing some finish testing. And normally I wouldn't share with you the results of my tests. I don't think it's all that interesting usually. I would rather show you how I apply a product to a finished guitar, because I think that makes more sense. But it's going to be a while before I actually have a chance to use this product on a finished guitar, maybe a couple of weeks. And I have to say I'm so excited about this product that I wanted to share it with you right now. Now, first of all, I want you to understand I am not a paid endorser by anybody. I can occasionally get samples from manufacturers, but nobody is paying me to say kind things about their products. If a product works, I'll let you know. If it doesn't work, I'll let you know. I'm not going to mince words, and I try to be as honest as possible, because I know when I go back to, when I think back to when I first started building guitars, I had to make a lot of mistakes, and because there wasn't that many people sharing this kind of information with them. So I'm hoping that by sharing it with you, you can avoid making those same mistakes and can achieve success faster with fewer headaches. So with that in mind, the products that I've been testing, the company that makes them sent me some samples, and I've been trying it out, but there was never any exchange of, here, we'll give you these products if you say some nice things about them. Instead, they just gave it to me, and I think they've got their fingers crossed that I'll say some nice things about them. Well, I actually tested several products, and one of the products that I tried has not lived up to my expectations, and I'm somewhat reluctant to even mention this product. But the other products that I am going to mention performed so well that I have no reservation about mentioning what they are and how I used them. Specifically, though, the products I'm talking about come from a company called Becker Labs, which markets Crystalac products. And in a video that I shot several months ago, I mentioned that I use Crystalac Super Premium Clear Gloss. I really like the product, and it sprays easy, it sands and buffs out really nice. But they contacted me a few weeks ago, and they said, you may not be aware of this, but we sell some products that are specifically made for guys like you who build stringed instruments, and we think these products might work a little better for you. Well, I kind of thought, yeah, I can't imagine they'd be that much better, but I'll bite. So they sent me some samples of the product, and I have been testing them this past week. And I have to say, these products are a game changer. As you know, I'm kind of a big fan of the whole water-based finish approach. However, water-based finishes are really hit and miss, and some of them work okay and others just don't work at all. And I've been waiting for that product to come along that satisfies my criteria for what would constitute a really good instrument finish. Ultimately, what it has to do is it has to lay down crystal clear. It has to dry and cure very hard so that it's scratch resistant. And that's where I run into problems. A lot of the water-based finishes tend to, after a week of cure time or 2 weeks of cure time, they still are soft enough that you can dent and scratch them pretty easily. And that's just not what I want in a water-based finish. Now, there are some that are pretty complex and sophisticated where you can add products to them to do sort of a pre-cat type finish or a post-cat type finish, which means you add the products and they catalyze and they'll cure harder. But I wanted something that I can just open the can, pour it into my spray gun, spray it, and be done. I don't want to have to do a lot of mixing and all that kind of stuff. So Becker Labs sent me their product that they recommended. And it's actually what they sent me were 3 products. The first is a sanding sealer. This is their Crystalac sanding sealer. And it's just a simple water-based sanding sealer. They also sent me their water-based wood grain filler. And then they sent me their Brite Tone Instrument Finish. Now these products have been out for a while. It's not like they're absolutely brand new, but they were new to me. I'd never actually tried them before. And I haven't really heard that many people out there who've tried them and what their experiences have been. So this was going to be kind of new for me. So what I did was I took a piece of scrap maple mahogany. And first thing I did was I planed it and then I sanded it to 220 grit. Then I applied a single coat of the sanding sealer. Now this stuff is really interesting. Sanding sealers are designed to help you achieve a really smooth surface before you apply your final clear coats so that you don't have to apply so many clear coats. But this sanding sealer does a little bit more. It has a slight amber color to it, so when you put it on the wood, it actually will deepen the color of the wood a little bit and enhance the appearance of the grain, which has kind of a unique feature to it. So keep that in mind. And the other thing it does, and this is why I was really interested in using it, was if you've stained or dyed as many guitar bodies as I have, you know that stain and dye can lay down on bare wood in an inconsistent, sometimes blotchy manner, especially on a guitar body where you have a lot of curves and cutouts. In those areas, you can expose end grain, and end grain, being so highly absorbent, will suck up stain and dye and will appear really, really dark in comparison with the rest of the wood. So in order to try to lay the stain down in a consistent fashion, we have to do what is sometimes referred to as precondition the wood. And that's what this sanding sealer does. It acts as a preconditioner. When you put it down on the wood, it soaks into the wood, and after it dries, you can sand the surface with like a 220 grit, and that will remove some of that sealer from the face grain of the wood, but on the open end grain, it remains in place. So that way, when you put your dye or your stain down, it will absorb uniformly over the surface of the wood. It won't soak up as so much in the end grain as it will, as it normally would. So you get a much more consistent application of stain. So what I did was, after I sanded the wood to 220 grit, I applied the sanding sealer, just a single coat, let that dry, and then I lightly sanded the surface with 220 grit. Then I decided to put down an oil-based stain, because I figured what better way to test a water-based finish than to throw in an oil-based product in the middle of the whole process, because if it works with the oil-based finish, it's going to be a good product. So after I put down that sanding sealer and sanded it, I applied just a simple oil-based stain. Let that dry for a couple of days, and then I went back, applied another coat of the sanding sealer just to kind of act as a barrier coat, lightly sanded it. Then I applied Crystalac's Wood Grain Filler, and this stuff is kind of the consistency of pudding, and there's a couple of ways you can apply it. You can rub it in with a cloth, you can even rub it in with your fingers because it's non-toxic. Or, as a lot of guys like to do, you can trowel it on and trowel it off. On scrap, I tried every different approach, and I found that it doesn't make any difference. And I prefer to wipe it on because a lot of my guitars have so much curvy shapes and contoured surfaces that it's just easier to wipe it on with a rag. So I wiped on a coat and then let that dry. Now, the one thing you need to know about wood grain fillers, it says it's non-shrinking formula, and for the most part, the shrinkage is extremely minimal, but it still does shrink. And because of that, you may have to do several coats to completely fill the grain. The other key is you can't just lay this stuff down, let it dry, and then put another coat over the top of it, because you have to sand down between coats and get that surface as level as possible and reduce the high spots. If you don't, when you put the second coat of wood grain filler down, it's just going to simply build up on the high spots, and you'll feel like you're never really filling the grain. So you got to sand it down smooth, apply a second coat, and I tried it on the mahogany as well as some ash, and I found typically 3 to 4 coats seems to work the best. And I would apply a coat, sand it, apply another coat, let that dry, sand it, and then the third coat. But then after the third coat, I sanded it level again, and then I took some of the wood grain filler and put it into a separate container and then thinned it out with a little bit of water, just made it a little bit thinner. That way, because at that point the grain and the pores were mostly filled in, there was just a tiny amount left to be filled. But I was afraid that because it was so thick, it might not get down into the bottom of those tiny little crevices and fill them in. So by thinning it out with a little bit of water, I think it went down a little bit better. And then I let that dry and gave the surface a final 220 grit sanding or 320 grit sanding. And the surface was pretty smooth, and the grain was almost completely filled in. A little bit here and there that still was a little bit less filled, but for the most part it was pretty completely filled. After that, I put down a final coat of the sanding sealer, and I sprayed that on, let it dry, and then sanded the whole surface with a 320 grit. And at that point I was ready to apply the Brite Tone Instrument Finish, and I just sprayed that on. Now, one of the things about water-based finishes is when you spray on a water-based finish, if you spray it on too heavy, they all seem to develop this kind of a milky bluish haze. And when that happens, you have to stop and let the finish dry and cure and gas off completely before you can apply another coat. And if you're careful and do that, that bluish milky haze should fade. But then if you don't and you spray another coat over it, you can trap that haze into it, and it's really noticeable on dark woods. And that's been one of the real issues I've had with some of the water-based finishes. So when I applied the Brite Tone, I decided I'm going to spray this down as heavy as I can and see if it generates that milky bluish haze. And it didn't. I have to say I was amazed. I sprayed this stuff down really heavy, laying my piece down flat and spraying it really heavy, and it did not develop even a hint of that milky bluish haze. It was crystal clear. And after about 3 coats, the surface was just glass smooth. Incredible. I mean, I've never seen that. I mean, there was no orange peel or anything, and I've never had that happen in any of the water-based finishes. I've never had that really happen with any of the polyurethanes or the automotive finishes that I've tried spraying. There's always a really rough texture involved, but with this stuff, it lays down like glass, and I can see reflection really nicely. I don't know if the camera's going to pick that up, but so I ended up spraying a total of about 6 coats, and after the 6th coat, I decided to let it cure, and I'm going to let it cure for about a week. I don't know the actual cure time for the product, but based on my experience with other water-based finishes, I'm going to say it's going to be about a week. So I'll let it cure. And I did do a test last week where I just sprayed some on a piece of scrap ash, and I've let that sit for almost a week now. And I tell you, it is rock hard. It is amazing how hard the surface is. Maybe not as hard as polyester, but I would say it slots in somewhere between nitrocellulose and polyester. So as far as an instrument finish, I think this is perfect for it. And what's really nice about it is you can get that deep, wet look, glossy finish, but without having to spray 15 coats like you do with nitro. I think 6 coats is about all you need to do. And what I plan to do next week, and I'll update you in episode 62, is I will level sand with 800 grit dry, And then I'll take my random orbital sander with a 2000 grit Mirka Abralon pad and just go over it really quick. And then I'll hit the buffer and see how well it comes up to a mirror shine. But I'm really confident that this is going to produce an amazing finish. So I have to say I'm really impressed. And I'll put links to these products down in the description below so that you can go check them out, on Amazon or whatnot. Because I don't think you can buy these in most local woodworking stores. I think it's really only available mail order. And the one thing you'll notice is the Brite Tone is fairly expensive. It's almost double what I've seen other water-based finishes, but you're going to use a lot less of this finish. Only, maybe half as much as you normally would. So keep that in mind when you look at the prices on it. So, but that is my my finish testing experience for this week. And definitely take a look at these products. I think you'll be pretty happy with them. So this is the other guitar that I'm working on. I think I've shown this in some of my other videos, and I probably posted photos of it up on Facebook. But what I'm doing is I'm applying a gloss polyurethane finish to it, and I'm doing a hand rubbed gloss polyurethane finish. So right now what I'm doing is I'm building up coats, and I think I've got about 4 coats on here right now. I plan to build it up to about 8 to 10. Then I'll let it cure for a couple of weeks, and then I'll level sand it, polish it, and buff it out. This is a 6-string Osiris standard guitar as the Gato bridge, a pair of my Highline humbuckers, and Gato tuners on it. And right now what I'm doing is I'm just doing some final spot leveling on the frets. The frets are stainless steel, and it's a Chechen fretboard. And I've decided, I think that going forward from now on, every guitar I build is going to be stainless steel frets. I know a lot of people complain about how hard they are to work with, but I've found that if you are really careful in how you radius your fretboard and radius the fret wire and how you install the frets, I use a fret press, you actually have far less work to do. I find that I can spot level the frets and then recrown them really quickly just using a 3-corner file. And then before polishing them, I'll string up the guitar, set the action, set the intonation, get everything tuned up right, and I'll play the guitar in the sitting and standing position, and I'll look for fret buzz and dead frets and that sort of thing. And typically I don't run into any issues if I've done everything correctly, taken the time to do it right. So I end up actually doing less work with stainless steel frets than I do with nickel silver frets, and that's the reason why I think I'm gonna stop using nickel silver and just start using nothing but stainless steel. Well, that's all I got for this episode from the Luthier's Workbench. In episode 62, I have no idea what I'll talk about, but hopefully it'll be something really cool and interesting. Until then, take care, and we'll see you soon.